Now that we have dispelled and dismissed the monolithic myth of a global Judeo-cultural and historical experience, let us investigate a bit closely his claims of a Muslim-Arab purge of Jewish populations, which resulted in their mass migration towards Jerusalem in 1948. The truth is that before Israel's declaration of independence in 1948, approximately 800,000 Jews were living in lands that are now considered the modern Arab world. A further 200,000 Jews lived in Pahlavi, Iran, and the Republic of Turkey. The sum total of all of these communities is estimated to be around 1 million. These were Jewish communities who were indigenous to the Middle East and North Africa. They were by no means newcomers, nor were they kicked out of their ancestral homes in Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Morocco, and other places. What Zionists seek to do is to misinterpret the reality of what really happened from 1948 onwards. After independence, the Zionist establishment, headed by the first Israeli Prime Minister and the architect of the mass migration program, David Ben-Gurion, presented the Knesset with a plan to double the Jewish population within just 4 years. This meant bringing in 600,000 migrants in a 4-year period, or 150,000 per year. Absorbing 150,000 newcomers annually under the trying conditions facing the new state was a heavy burden indeed. The first large-scale exodus took place in the late 1940s and in the early 1950s. Jews came from Iran, Iraq, Yemen, and Libya. In these cases, over 90% of the Jewish population left the countries, heading towards Israel. In fact, very few Jews from Muslim nations and Arab nations left their country during the British Mandate period. Around 900,000 Jews from Muslim-majority nations in West Asia, North Africa, and to a lesser extent Central Asia, Southern Asia, and Southwest Asia in the 20th century packed up and left their countries in response to the creation of Israel and the invitation of the Prime Minister of Israel. Up to 600,000 Jews from the Arab and neighboring regions reached Israel by 1972. According to researchers and scholars, there are two major factors for the Zionist mass immigration movements of the 1940s. The first was initiated in 1944 by Ben-Gurion when he called for bringing in 1 million Jews to Palestine, even if public soup kitchens had to be set up to feed them. The second drive was to extend the call for migration to include the indigenous Jews who were already living amongst the Arabs and the Muslims in surrounding nations. Opponents in the Jewish Agency and the government of mass immigration argued that there was no justification for organizing large-scale immigrations among Jews whose lives were not in danger, particularly when the desire and motivation were not their own. The historical record speaks for itself. These were not Jews who were being expelled from the Arab lands. They were ideologically and economically incentivized to leave and travel to Jerusalem on the orders and command of the Jewish Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, whose objective was to bolster up the Jewish population in 4 years.